We ready?
I think we're ready.
All right. Greetings, Earthlings. Welcome to episode 13. We are shooting on location in the living room. Woo!
Yeah, new location.
That's-
We've graduated, folks. We're
That's
out of
right.
the dining room.
So the heroes you deserve on location. I'm Henry.
I'm Mike.
I'm Richard.
And today, episode 13, we're going to discuss X-Men Apocalypse.
That's right.
Right, so I guess to start off, Richard, how familiar are you with Apocalypse in general, or that the storyline, I guess?
I wasn't all that familiar, but I thought they did a pretty decent job of explaining it to me. Whether or not it followed comics, I'm not 100% sure, but it worked. I mean, I was able to follow it.
Micah, were you familiar with? How familiar are you with it? Because you weren't much of a mutant collector or reader.
No, not historically, no. But I do remember Apocalypse from the animated series.
Right.
So I had a vague understanding of what his powers were, and what role he played in the X-Men universe. But no, I don't have an extensive knowledge of what he was up until this film.
Yeah,
which I think it did a good job fleshing out his character for me.
Right, I was a comic book collector when he first appeared. I think it was X Factor 4. So I was there. I have his first appearance. So I was there kind of. His first appearance was kind of crude. They didn't really know what direction. But, as in the 90s when Age of Apocalypse, he became more powerful, more fully fleshed out, I guess, as he become more popular, I guess, with the mutant madness era of the 90s. All right, so I guess let's start off with, let's talk about plot points. I mean, before we discuss the good stuff and the bad stuff, I mean, let's talk about fanboy stuff. I mean, Mike, let's start with, what was in that movie that struck you like, that was awesome?
There was a few things,
Sure.
actually. I mean, the big one was, of course, watching Weapon X tear ass through the the Alkali Lake facility. That was straight out of the comics. Him in the entire VR get up.
The Weapon X garb.
Exactly. Well, as such as it is.
Right.
He's in some cargo shorts and some tubes sticking out of him. But the visual of actually seeing him do that, I mean, we didn't get that in the Wolverine.
Right. What was the artist who did Weapon X?
Barry Windsor Smith.
There you go. I was
did,
trying to think of Barry Windsor Smith. Yes. It's very synonymous with that Weapon X.
Yeah.
So that was for me the biggest, mark out moment for me. Like, oh God, there it is! And I mean, as soon as they got into the room and heard the banging on the container that he was in, I'm like, oh God, this is happening. I mean, we'd already seen a little bit of that in the trailer, but realizing it was about to happen was, probably one of my favorite moments in the film. Of course, I think we'll all agree that Quicksilver scene once again stole the entire film nearly.
I didn't think they were going to be able to outdo what they did with him in Days, but I really thought that it was they did a really good job.
Yeah, they next leveled it for sure.
Yeah, they definitely did a really good job with him. Through the whole movie, I thought he was probably one of my favorite characters. I did not expect him to be a scene stealer because he's typically not that particular character in the comics, but they've done a really good job with him for sure.
Right, and to go back to your Weapon X moment, it felt like Wolverine went in his berserker rage, but a lot of that happened off camera. You don't see a lot of
there's a lot of implied violence. I mean, we did get to see. I mean, there was blood splatter certainly, but again, it happened off camera. I mean, clearly he's digging his claws into people.
Right, and I think there's like rumors or talk that the next Wolverine movie is going to be rated R, and I can see more full-on berserker rage in that movie if that happens.
God, I hope so.
Right?
I want to see limbs flying. I want this to look like
a Kill Bill.
Like exactly,
Sure.
like that kind of that level of violence. Nearly cartoonish, but still gory enough to make me cringe and go like, oh,
There's also rumors that they're going to be introducing X-23.
Right, especially with that end credit scene, right? That sets up for it.
Yeah.
So she's a clone?
Yes.
I'm not real familiar with her character.
She is a clone of Logan's.
Yeah, Daken I know from Siege.
Right.
When he became a member of...
Who's Daken, by the way, for the non...
Daken is...
Not the band.
No, not D-A... D-A-K-E-N-N.
I think it's 2 Ks as well.
2K?
Sure.
Google it. You'll get it. Anyway,
a couple of letters in
he
there.
is Wolverine's biological son.
Right. And X-23 is a clone of Wolverine.
Yeah, female clone
of Wolverine.
but she's already basically taking over the mantle in the comics, so a lot of people are expecting her to do the same, since it makes no sense to recast Jackman and Jackman is pretty much on his way out as far as age and all of those things. I know some people will say, oh, they can do an Old Man Logan story with him. Maybe not now,
Not yet.
but maybe.
Not yet.
But I think that if she is going to be she is now Wolverine in the comics, that they may go that route in the movies, at least for the next couple of movies.
Especially because that Stinger scene, and again, we should have done a spoiler warning. We're going to talk about everything in the movie.
Yeah.
But it showed the suitcase of Essex, which is Nathaniel Essex, which is Mr. Sinister, who kind of has ties to X-23, which is why all this talk is coming up with X-23 possibly being in the next either X-Men movie or even in the Wolverine movie. I mean,
or even the proposed X-Force movie, which
Sure.
now is bringing in Deadpool and possibly Cable. There's a lot of Fox is doing a lot of really cool things right now with the mutants. I'm really pleased
There's
with.
a lot of possibilities.
Yeah,
for sure.
it's all really good fanboy stuff, and they're doing it justice. They're doing a really good job with it.
So my hang up here, I'm going to talk about brief hang up.
Sure.
We're going to jump the gun a little bit. So at the end of Days of Future Past, Mystique leads the Special Forces team away with Wolverine captured.
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
So what happened between then and now? Mystique is out in the world and Wolverine is in the Weapon X.
Well, yeah, because at the end when they're on the rescue boat,
Okay.
pulling up his what they guess presumed was his carcass,
Right.
She is wearing
Strikers.
Striker's skin,
Right.
presumably to rescue him, but I guess he was like, nah, and
So
just
she-
gave him to the real Striker because he ends up with him.
Right.
So there's a bit of a continuity gap there.
Right.
I'm not sure how to reconcile. I'm not sure.
Well, I don't know that it's a movie continuity gap as it is to just them trying to fit in comic continuity. You know, I mean, obviously they're following decades, right? So Days was in First Class was in the 60s, Days was in the 70s. They knew that this one had to be in the 80s, and so they wanted to touch on the Weapon X, especially since now I always do that. Deadpool was so
the red costume.
was so well received movie wise, and they also introduced the Weapon X program there again.
Right.
So they're going to make use of that Weapon X, and I'm sure there is a way that they're explaining the ending of Days to the beginning of 10 years passed. A lot of things could have happened in 10 years.
Right.
There's no way for us to know exactly what happened.
Right, I know. There's a couple of deleted scenes. I think there was a scene where Jubilee uses powers, which we don't see in the movie. I think there was a scene of Nightcrawler breakdancing, and then there was more of a mall scene. So I mean, it makes sense. 80s and Jubilee Mall. I mean, that was very part of the 80s. I think the mall.
Yeah,
scene.
there was a bit of a tease. I was expecting teenage hijinks in a mall.
I was a Tiffany cameo, concert or something.
We got nothing. We got her making a snarky remark about how trilogies, the last film in a trilogy, sucking,
right.
which is
That was Jean Grey.
her thumbing her nose at Brett Ratner, I guess.
Yeah.
So I mean, I don't know. I feel like that could have been fun, but it also could have taken you out of the moment. It would have been like the dancing scene in
Spider-Man 3.
No, I was gonna
Guardians.
say that too.
The dance off in Guardians was like, what the hell is this?
That was hilarious. No. In First Class, where they're having their teenage angsty moment where they're all giving each other nicknames.
Oh yeah, and the party.
And
yeah.
they end up like literally
right.
swinging from the ceiling and wrecking all kinds of shit at the government facility they were at.
Yeah, I get
That was a bit jaunty when they went to that scene. I mean, I get them talking and exploring each other's powers. That's what kids do.
Yeah.
But the whole let's just wreck shit and then dance afterwards, and then having them walk into frame like, oh, you naughty kids.
Yeah, I liked.
Just not the greatest bit of writing.
Yeah, I liked Weapon X. I liked the appearance of Sentinels there. I liked the appearance of Caliban. I mean, that's teasing Morlocks, and eventually,
That's right.
in comic continuity, Caliban becomes one of the stronger horsemen of Apocalypse, Death.
Yes.
So I mean, there's potential there later on, especially with Psylocke escaping. I mean, she could easily pop up an X-Force. I think she's more perfect for Deadpool, maybe.
Well, she's and the interesting thing is she already has those ties to Caliban. I mean, she was part of his original crew.
Yeah, she could run right back to him. And
So
then
yeah, so
there's a film there, maybe.
that was handled fairly well as far as that goes. I mean, she really didn't have anything to do, like any Psylocke stuff to do. I mean, she was very popular in the comics. the Asian version of her anyway, and then she came back to the British version. For those of you that don't know, she is the sister of Captain Britain. Brian Braddock, I think his name is.
Correct.
So, but during Acts of Vengeance, I think, is when she became Asian.
Correct.
So, I think people, mutants, the mutants were cool back in those days.
As attractive as Olivia Munn is, I was hoping for a little bit more screen time to look at.
Yeah, but you're right. But she really didn't have anything to do. I mean, it was definitely, in my opinion, still Magneto's movie. Magneto and Charles. Those were the two driving forces.
Yes.
I don't
And a little bit of
that.
Mystique in there, a little bit.
And a little bit of Jean.
I felt like the film orbited Mystique a little too much.
Too much.
Yeah.
I think that
They're grooming her to be the next leader.
No, I think that it was the logical choice for her to be the trainer of soldiers, because there isn't
Sure.
anybody there that would be doing that. And because of her connections to Magneto and her philosophical ties to Magneto.
And how some of the mutants look up to her.
Yes. I think it was a logical choice, and I'm okay with it because, like he said, Charles is now accepting the fact that they're not just training students; they're also training soldiers, and it makes sense that she's essentially doing the Wolverine role,
Right. Yes.
right? She's taking on the Wolverine role,
Right.
but because they look up to her, at least Storm did, and some of these other mutants did. I liked it. I thought it was okay. I mean, you're not going to shout, you're not going to push away somebody's like Jennifer Lawrence, who is going to sell tickets. So I thought it was an interesting way of incorporating her into the movie.
Sure.
Okay. So, all right. I know we just talked about our fanboy moments. I guess, do you want to classify that as the good points in the movie, or is there something you want to talk about specifically about what you really loved? Non-fanboy. I'm like,
where I'm not just like geeking out at the fact that I'm seeing things that I read in comics or seen in the animated film come to actual life.
right.
I mean, sure, there was plenty to like. McAvoy, as usual, was crushing it. So was Michael Fassbender, as usual. Same for Jennifer Lawrence. She's owned Mystique through these 3 films.
She looks good for after 3 decades. Right?
She really does, although that's
Her power, I guess.
sure. So, I mean, the performances, as usual, were great. Evan Peters, again,
yes.
crushing it as Quicksilver.
I thought Sophie Turner did a decent job too as Jean Grey.
Jean Grey, she did a great job.
I thought she did a really good job. Actually, all of the young kids were pretty decent
the
actors.
cast in general.
Yeah, they were all very good.
Isaac Elliott, again, not bad for his first full body paint villain.
It's almost kind of a...
You mean Oscar Isaac?
That's what I said, right? I said, what did I call him?
Oscar David, I think.
Well, either way, it's Oscar Isaac.
You know the guy.
But it's almost kind of a shame because he's kind of buried under all that makeup. You kind of want to...
Yeah, he doesn't get to emote.
Right.
But he was a pretty well fleshed out comic book villain. There was actually a lot going on here, and you kind of you definitely knew where he was coming from and who he was and what he was used to.
I mean, you understood the villain's motivation to do what he was doing.
Absolutely. You absolutely did, and you understood how he was manipulating, the current 4 horsemen and who he was using. It was good. I thought the acting pretty much was a solid for everybody involved, I thought.
Oh, except for whoever was playing, that kid playing Angel.
Yeah, that was pretty rough.
Yeah. I'm glad he didn't speak very
well,
much.
he got better once he didn't talk and once he was all once he was
Just
Archangel.
posturing.
Yeah, once he was
He's
Archangel.
just like, I'm just going to stand with my chest out and my
Yeah.
wings all flappy.
Well, to be fair, Psylocke did the same
Sure,
thing.
sure.
I mean, she looked much better.
Is she required to do much else, really? But her fight scenes were pretty badass. She was had a great fight scene with Beast, where we got to see both their skills.
Yeah.
And Storm versus Cyclops.
Yep.
That was pretty sick too.
And then, again, a more fleshed out, longer battle of Angel versus Nightcrawler when they were teleporting all over the place.
That's right.
In the
Yeah,
pyramid.
Nightcrawler was really well done too. I was impressed with him as well.
All right. So, was there any good? I know I asked Michael this. Were there any good stuff that you liked? The good points of this movie?
I really liked, and again, I'm always like a softie, and it's very rare that they're able to put something in a movie like this and for it not to feel shoehorned. But I really appreciated the Moira McTaggart. I thought every scene that she was in was really well done, and then especially at the end when Charles gives her back her memories, I think that was the moment where, like I told you, it was a moment where I kind of got a little emotional, and I don't typically do, or I haven't at these types of movies, but it was really done well. It was a lot more heart than I expected in this movie, especially with them two, and then also with Fassbender and the scenes with his wife and child, and then just like the growth. Or the coming of age for Jean Grey. There was definitely a lot more heart in this movie than I expected there was.
Yeah, him imploring her to use her powers and not be afraid. That was.
And I really, really like it. Connected with me. Like I was emotionally more interested than I thought I would be, and that's a testament to either the writing, the performances, the directing, all of it put together. But I really enjoyed those moments, and there was enough of them that it wasn't just one part of it, but there was a lot of heart, a lot more heart than I was expecting.
Cool. I mean, I guess the stuff that I like was stuff that I kind of mentioned at the beginning with the fanboy moments. I like the Quicksilver. I always liked Nightcrawler, and I liked Alan Cummings' version, and I like this version as well. I just like Nightcrawler.
Yeah, and he wasn't just there he wasn't just there. He served an actual utilitarian purpose. They said, get him in there so he can get Charles out fast.
Right.
Yeah. And just, we're going to use you to get, he had a purpose. And he really, they put him to work.
Right.
So he wasn't just, oh, look, there's Nightcrawler. It's
right, and that's the beginning of the next generation, Cyclops, Jean Grey, Nightcrawler, when they were Storm, when they were walking around in the Weapon X program, and that's kind of, they're already working as a team, and the foundation of a team, and Storm is going to come along, so that's kind of like.
And Unipocalypse seemed to recognize that, or was it Psylocke that recognized it and said, okay, separate them?
Right, which is kind of just
because as soon as they arrive, they have this team cohesion that's really putting them on their heels.
Well, it was more battle strategy.
Like, you know what, I don't like this. Get them apart from each other. Let's take them on one-on-one.
Right. Okay. Cool. So, what did you not like? What was the? Wow. Yes.
There were some bits with the story that I wasn't crazy about. We went through the trouble of watching Magneto lose his family, and then the ensuing rage, which makes sense, and then what happens towards the end is just him sort of like, oh well, I guess to hell with that. We're okay now, because Mystique said to join her, so I'm gonna forget how pissed off I am at humanity. Because reasons. I couldn't. That was hard to reconcile. And the fact that he didn't consider for a moment that the catalyst for all of it was Apocalypse Awakening. That he wasn't caught using his powers by accident. Mm-hmm. It was that shockwave that was sent throughout the world by Apocalypse Awakening that caused that vat of steel to fall off kilter and forced him to make a decision, albeit the wrong one, but he immediately knew he was in trouble, but he never, I guess, drew the line between that event and what ultimately ended up happening to his family. Right. So that, maybe that's a little too deep for a comic book movie, but it's not one that was lost on me, and I barely thought about it.
Yeah. Was that it? What you have?
That's the one that really stuck in my craw. There was pacing issues that I wasn't crazy about, but the film was pretty fast. There was no boring parts or lulls in the action really. So the pacing issues I had were more that, it felt like they jumped from action scene to action scene to action scene to action scene without so much as a breath between them, in some occasions. And some of the action shots were, like you get when you have that much happening on. It's hard to tell what's going on where. So it's it's a lot of blurry fast action where maybe they slowed it down a bit and given more time to the fights. We could have gotten a little bit more vested. It's clear we're going to have a winner in some cases, so it was hard to get emotionally tied down to a fight. I didn't feel like anybody was in any real danger at any point.
Okay, cool. Richard, what you got?
The same kind of thing. I was pretty much just going along with the movie from the beginning. It was working for me. I didn't really. A couple of, maybe the characters' designs here and there. I still wasn't a fan of Apocalypse's design. It's not enough for me to hate the movie because the acting was very well done and everything. But, I thought he looked much better in the robe than he did when he took it off. I thought, they could have just kept him in the robe the whole time. It would have been cool. But what Mike says, the kind of the resolution, and not only just with Magneto, but with Storm as well. Psylocke is really the only one. I don't ever believe that they were ever mind controlled. These four horsemen were basically following or serving Apocalypse of their own volition.
I agree. Yes.
So I thought it was interesting that Psylocke's character, who essentially had no emotional ties to any of these people, was the one that was able to stay in that same kind of frame of mind. And actually Storm has no connection either. So, but Storm's connection was to Mystique, and I thought they did a decent job of making that connection, right? So, they set up that little Easter egg, or not Easter egg, but they set up that little kernel at the beginning of the movie where it's obvious that she idolizes Mystique.
A little foreshadowing there.
Yeah. Well, not only that, but you know what, guys? Here's the reason why she turns.
Right.
Because she sees what's happening, and you know what? No, if Mystique is on the other side, then maybe she's right and I've been wrong.
Right.
And so I'm not going to say that it's a detriment.
It was a thin whiskey.
It's a very
thread,
thin.
But
Yeah, it's a very
run
yeah.
through.
It did. They did manage to make the connections. It's not super strong, and I can totally understand. Magneto has always been riding the fence ever since we've ever met him. He's always been that character. So it's kind of hard. I mean, yes, it's kind of weird that he stopped, but he's always done that. This is just typically who he is. So what was kind of weirder for me was that they were kind of like all chummy and pally at the very end. And he goes, "I'll see you later, my good friend." It's like, "Yeah, no big deal. I'll see you later." That was kind of weird to me.
Yeah, that was.
But really, that's the only thing that was kind of like, well, that was weird. But I thought they did a decent job, at least showing me why Storm would have left the fold. Magneto has always just been on his own side. I don't know that he was ever on Apocalypse's side. I think he was just working out his own problems.
He was happy to be imbued with the power to take his rage to the next level.
I don't think that he was actually like along for the ride. I think he was just, you gave me this, I'm going to do what I want to do, until he realized, like you said, reasons. And so, I could see where you're coming from. It wasn't enough to like, that was dumb, because everything else, I mean, you could tell that they made it a point of trying to connect everything, and I thought they did a decent job with it.
Oh, and the whole creative character scene kind of took me out of the thing when he was Apocalypse is like forming their armor. That was just super silly.
Oh yeah. Well, yeah, it was only Archangel though.
Yeah, I mean, presumably he did it for the rest of them, because Magneto's in new. He's got new digs on. They
had times to shower and change.
That's true. Well, you got
seriously.
Right?
So, I mean, here he is, like, all right, cool. But before we go out, I mean,
honestly, I remember seeing that, and I thought to myself, that's for the fanboys, because Archangel is like a direct, Archangel was created
when he's putting the tats on his face.
in the comic books, right? Archangel is like Apocalypse directly created him to look like that. The other ones, they still looked good. They still looked. Yeah, they still looked like the way they look. But Archangel's look was developed by Apocalypse, so I think that's probably why they did that.
Angel had committed suicide in the comic books, and people thought he was dead. And Apocalypse recovered the body and converted him to become Archangel.
Right. Did Mr. Sinister not have a hand in that?
No.
Am I remembering that wrong?
No, Mr. Sinister's issues are with the Summers boys.
Correct.
That's
and
right.
Cable.
That is right.
Well, which is a Summers boy.
Right, true, right? I thought you meant Havoc and
okay. Again, I was drawing the wrong line between those characters.
There was always a kind of a suspicion that he could be their father, but they never. I don't know that they ever fell through with that, or followed through with that.
I don't think so. What I didn't like is very much in relation to both of you, the whole Magneto thing. I think in his destruction and his new powers, I think he killed a lot of people. And a lot of deaths. There were not a lot of on-screen deaths, but you got to admit, in everything that he did, in the buildings that he tore away, a lot of people died. And at the very end, thank you. So again, he's still a wanted criminal, just like at the end of the other one. And
but it has such a much larger scale too.
Right, exactly. And so they're gonna just again let him go. And
you're talking about 9/11 level events,
right?
Like all around the world. Probably the most known face,
right,
in the entire country now. In all countries,
right?
And he's just
see you later,
bros.
Thank you, brother.
Yep.
See you in another life, but other, right? And it's a little bit of story, a little bit of pacing. The whole when Apocalypse is talking, I feel when they're at the ledge, they're all just posturing and just when he's talking to Xavier, they're just standing there looking pretty. And when Magneto is talking to Xavier, kind of like Apocalypse is talking to the other guys, the other horsemen, they're just like completely ignoring him. You know, it's just they're in their own world. Just minor points here and there.
Yeah, little bits like that. You can tell maybe some of those were composite shots.
Sure. All right, so are we ready to give a rating?
Absolutely.
Sure.
Or unless there's other topics to discuss?
No further business.
All right, Mike, you go first.
I'm gonna give this a solid 7.5. I was very pleased with it. It was fun. I want to watch it again. I think it stands up as a larger body too, given the two previous films, and it certainly encompasses everything that we wanted. I mean, it doesn't tie it up in a neat little bow, but we're left wanting more. So, how is that a bad thing?
Sure.
So, solid 7.5.
Richard?
I actually really like this movie, but I'm going to give it a 7, only because that's what I gave Civil War. And in my opinion, I don't know that it was better than Civil War, but I definitely do believe it was as good as Civil War. There were some things that Civil War did better, and there were some things that Apocalypse did better. But I think I had more fun watching Apocalypse than I did. But I think that they were just as good as well. I can't say that one was better than the other. So that's the only reason I'm giving it a 7.
Before we move on, okay, I'm going to go ahead and give my rating, but I want to come back to a certain topic that we'll talk. I'm going to give it a 7. I thought it was a good popcorn movie, it was a good summer movie, but just, I don't know, maybe, like you said, the whole pacing, the story, just kind of just lessened it for me. But it was still a good summer movie, in my opinion. So I know we did kind of discuss off screen here the whole Rotten Tomatoes scoring. So, like, what did you want to say about this?
Well,
Since we're giving ratings here.
I'm still like perplexed by critics and people have suspected that there's some kind of a conspiracy that that Disney is trying to rule the world or whatever.
That's true.
But to me, Captain America: Civil War and X-Men: Apocalypse were as good as themselves. I thought that I actually probably had more fun because I had more connection to those X-Men characters. I've never really been that connected to the second or third tier Marvel characters. I didn't read them. So for me, from just an emotional standpoint, I was just more invested and more interested in the X-Men. That's just me as a moviegoer. But just from the structure of story and film, they were both as competent as each other.
So you're not so much an X-Man as you are an X-fan.
Well, like I said, I've never really been much of a Marvel reader. I read the X-Men, I read Spider-Man, and
you collected X-Force around the time.
And X-Force. I mean, the X books, and also Daredevil. But when everything kind of went nutty towards the end of the 90s, I kind of just stopped and I just kind of started collecting writers. And just for me, the better writers were writing for DC, and so I just kind of started buying more DC books. That's not to say any other reason, but I've heard even now X-Men books today are still very hard to read. They're not very good. So I think one of the reasons why people, or at least I liked this particular movie was that it was very reminiscent of the X-Men of our time, the 80s and the 90s. They all looked and acted the way that I remembered. And it was just, it was well done. It was fun. It was a fun movie. To me, Captain America is just as much a popcorn movie. It didn't do anything more for me than X-Men Apocalypse did. I just thought it was more fun. But going back to what we've talked about right now, in Rotten Tomatoes, it's currently in the mid 40s as far as percent, and of course, Batman v Superman was famously in the high 20s, and yet Civil War is at 92%. I don't understand that.
Yeah, I don't see a reason for the disparity in scores given exactly like you said. These films are on par with one another.
I just don't see the difference.
Did the airport scene really push people that far over the edge? I can't see that. I mean, it's a great scene. I love it. It's the one that sticks out the most in my head for Captain America Civil War. But to say that it was that much better than X-Men is just silly because they're both equally fun films.
Yeah.
They're not interchangeable, certainly. They're different stories, but if we're reviewing films from a critic standpoint, which means we're meant to be at least a little bit objective in our approach. If you have a certain preference for a franchise and you're letting that bleed through in your review, you're doing it wrong. You're doing it wrong. Okay, I was happy to rake other films over the coals when I didn't particularly like the franchise. Okay, but I am just I'm a shitlord. What do I know about anything? I'm just some guy on a podcast. I'm not doing this professionally. So it's okay if I let my bias show. But when you're contributing to an aggregate score on a site like this, there should be some cohesion in how the scores are laid out. When you see a film that you like and you see another film that you like and they're in the same genre, you'd expect them to be scored somewhere close. But again, like I said, for the despair to be this huge, there's either some sort of collusion or, again, there's a franchise bias that Disney has won the hearts and minds of the reviewers, that they're striking all the right chords, and X-Men didn't hit them as clearly.
And it's interesting because some people say, oh, well, it's the Marvel Universe, and look at what all they've done. The X-Men are infinitely more popular character-wise over the course of the same amount of years, 30 or 40 years that it's been, than any of those second or third tier Marvel characters. That's all anybody
ever talks to us about. I mean, when we're out in the world and our friends are talking to us about, these aren't people who are huge comic book fans. They're just our friends who also happen to enjoy these films. They say, oh, it would be cool if Avengers had Cyclops. It'd be cool if they had Wolverine, Wolverine, Spider-Man, all these franchises, all these characters that are owned by other properties. But those are the ones they want. But yeah, I mean, if they could get Wolverine in there, awesome. If they could get Deadpool in there, even better. But I guess since there's this line drawn between them,
But even Avengers proper, the actual Avengers title was never that super popular. I don't ever remember it being that popular. I remember Spider-Man being popular. I remember the X-books being popular. And every once in a while you'd have a crossover.
Yeah,
I mean, those were the books that were selling, and they just kept pumping out more Spider books because those are the books that were selling. Nobody bought Avengers. Nobody bought Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Nobody bought, Thor. Maybe people bought Captain America, sort of. I mean, sort of. Iron Man, no. I mean, it's weird that for whatever reason there is this newfound love
Iron
affair.
Man, I didn't even care about him until Extras.
Like, nobody seems to see anything wrong with these movies, and I'm not saying they're bad movies. I'm just not seeing the perfection that people are seeing. It doesn't. To me, I'm not gonna say interchangeable, but they are as good as themselves. And this idea that Marvel can do no wrong, it's like the Emperor has new clothes or whatever. I mean, they're not great movies. They're not great movies. They're good movies. They're not great movies. And I think people, I didn't understand when I saw the Rotten Tomatoes score for this movie. I was shocked because I didn't even bother to look. I just went and watched the movie, but I couldn't believe that was in the 40s. I figured if it was a Rotten score, maybe in the 60s, but not in the 40s. I guess we saw a different movie because with the caliber of acting just alone, the story was decent. The visuals were very good. I saw it in 3D. I thought the 3D visuals in X-Men were much better than the 3D visuals in Captain America. I saw Captain America again for the second time in 2D, and it looked much better in 2D. The 3D in Civil War was not very good. It was much better in X-Men. So I'm not really sure where the 92% in Rotten Tomatoes comes from. I have no idea. But if you are the type of viewer that's into that kind of thing, that you only look at that, I think you'll be doing yourself a disservice. Just watch the movie and make up your own mind. I thought X-Men Apocalypse was fun. I thought it was good. I thought it was as good. And if it's as good, it should have been a 93% too, because I don't see what it did that was that much worse than anything Captain America did.
Yeah, it wasn't that bad. It wasn't that bad of an apocalypse, really.
No, but that was kind of
forced.
It wasn't as bad as that pun either.
Right, that's true. Wow, that felt kind of forced. Anyway, so
that one will land some year, I'm sure.
It's just a grenade, and I throw it out, wait for it till hit later on. So that's it. That is our episode 13 on location. So thank you very much. I'm Henry.
I'm Mike.
And I'm Richard.
You can follow us on Facebook and Twitter. Comment below. Let us know if we're right or wrong. And see you next time. Bye.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, guys.